Welcome to History's Hidden Weird, the podcast that shines a flashlight on the strangest true stories buried in the dark corners of the past. I'm your host, Quinn Strange. And today, we meet the painters, sound designers, set builders, and con artists who turned deception into a battlefield weapon and helped win the war without firing a single real shot. This is the story of the Ghost Army of World War II. They were artists, actors, sound engineers, and set designers, and in World War II, they became soldiers of illusion. Armed with inflatable tanks, recorded battle sounds, fake radio signals, and nerves of steel, the U.S. Army's secret Ghost Army staged elaborate deceptions across Europe, tricking the Nazis into seeing entire divisions that didn't exist. It's 1944. You're a Nazi scout looking across a field in France. In the distance, you see a line of Sherman tanks, camouflaged but unmistakable. Trucks, soldiers, radio chatter. You're certain an American division is mobilizing for a major assault. You report back. The Germans shift troops. Reinforcements are sent. Plans are changed. But here's the twist. The tanks are inflatable. The soldiers? Actors. The radio transmissions? Completely fabricated. You've just been fooled by the most bizarre, and least violent, unit in World War II history, the Ghost Army. By the early 1940s, the U.S. military knew that brute force alone wasn't going to beat the Nazis. They needed strategy. Surprise. And sometimes, a little sleight of hand. Inspired by earlier British deception units, the U.S. Army formed a top-secret unit called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. It had one mission: deceive the enemy, and buy time, space, and advantage for real combat forces. The 23rd wasn't made up of your typical soldiers. It was a hand-picked group of around 1,100 men, many of whom were artists, designers, sound engineers, stage magicians, and even Broadway set builders. If it sounds like the setup to a Wes Anderson movie, just wait. So what did the Ghost Army actually do? They staged entire phantom divisions. Think about that for a second, 1,000 guys pretending to be 30,000. They used four main tools. 1. Visual deception, inflatable tanks, jeeps, planes, and artillery made of rubber and canvas. From a distance? Totally convincing. 2. Sonic deception, massive speakers mounted on half-tracks playing pre-recorded battle sounds, tanks moving, soldiers shouting, hammers clanking. 3. Radio deception, fake radio operators mimicking traffic from real units. They even copied their speaking styles and quirks. 4. Atmospheric details, insignias, laundry lines, fake campfires, even actors dressed as generals. It was warfare as performance art. And the Germans fell for it, again and again. The Ghost Army landed in France shortly after D-Day, and immediately got to work. Their biggest and most successful operation. Operation Vierzen, March 1945. The real Ninth Army was preparing to cross the Rhine River. The Ghost Army created a completely fake crossing site miles away. They rolled out inflatable tanks. Broadcast fake radio chatter. Played loudspeaker audio of pontoon bridge construction. They even wore counterfeit shoulder patches from real divisions. The ruse worked. The Germans diverted troops to the fake crossing point, leaving the real one exposed. Mission accomplished. Without a single bullet fired. Many of the men in the Ghost Army were artists before, or after, the war. You might recognize a few names. Ellsworth Kelly, future abstract painter. Bill Blass, who would go on to become a major fashion designer. Arthur Singer, a wildlife illustrator who designed postage stamps. They sketched scenes from villages they passed through. painted fake unit insignias by the dozen, designed camouflage, staged fake camps, and crafted backstories for divisions that didn't exist. They were soldiers, yes, but also actors, storytellers, and illusionists. They didn't just fight the war. They performed it. It all sounds clever, even kind of fun. But the stakes were deadly serious. If the Ghost Army was discovered, there were no backup troops behind them. No reinforcements. Just a handful of guys surrounded by balloon tanks and fake radios. If the Nazis had called the bluff, they would have been wiped out. And so, the pressure was intense. Every detail mattered. A single misplaced insignia, a slip of the tongue on radio, even too few tire tracks in the mud could blow the operation. It was a psychological game, and a damn good one. By the end of the war, the Ghost Army had carried out over 20 deception missions across Europe. They were credited with saving thousands of Allied lives. But after the war, their story was buried. Classified. Forgotten. Why? Maybe because the army didn't want to admit how close they'd come to disaster. Or maybe because a unit of inflatable tanks and sound tricks didn't fit the image of heroism. It wasn't until 1996, 50 years later, that their work was declassified. Some of the men were still alive. And they finally got to tell their story. Since the 2000s, historians, documentarians, and even Hollywood have started to give the Ghost Army their due. In 2022, they were finally awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest civilian honors in the United States. The citation praised their unique and distinguished service, a long overdue thank you for a job that required genius, nerve, and creativity under fire. It wasn't bombs and bullets that made them legends. It was imagination. The Ghost Army teaches us that war isn't always won by brute force. Sometimes, it's won by theater. By misdirection. By understanding how people think, and how to make them see what isn't there. These men weaponized illusion. They turned the battlefield into a stage and tricked one of the most dangerous armies in history, again and again. And they did it not with guns, but with paint, sound, and storytelling. It's a reminder that sometimes, the weirdest ideas are the most effective. Today, you can see some of the Ghost Army sketches and props in museums. Inflatable tanks. Fake radio logs. Paintings made in bombed-out French villages. And you can picture them, a group of weird, brilliant men crouched in hedgerows with a rubber Sherman tank, a reel-to-reel player blasting tank noises, and a script in hand. They weren't ghosts. They were artists pretending to be soldiers pretending to be an army. This has been History's Hidden Weird. I'm Quinn Strange, reminding you that sometimes, the strangest soldiers are the ones who never fire a shot. Thanks for listening. Stay creative. Stay subversive. Stay weird.